Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, give me a second. Give me a second. What's going on, Wee? How you doing? Give me just a minute here. Another stream today. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? I'll wait till more people come in, but then we can get into it. There's gonna be yeah. Hello. Yes, I'm back at the stream again. This is gonna be a short stream, to be clear. It's not gonna be too long. But it's just this is just something that's very fascinating to me, and I wanted to make a stream talking, and I wanted to do a stream talking about it because I wanted to, you know, and everything else like that. What's going on, Becky? What's going on, Becky? Everything else like that. I'll wait till a few more people come in, so I'll give it a couple minutes. I'm gonna sort of do sort of a startup, a swell. What's going on, Mind Boom? And then we'll probably get into talking about what we're gonna talk about today. Stream. We'll go on JDG. We'll get into the main thing. Give it a bit of time, and then we'll probably get into the main thing I want to mainly talk about, because I think it's super fascinating. It's also something I haven't fully read yet, so this is giving me a chance to fully read it too. So, all the hugs in the chat. This week has been quite the week for gaming news, definitely. Like, it's been quite the week. I'll probably also talk about, I guess, a couple other things as well, maybe, that happened today. I'll give it like one more minute, and then I'll get into what I want to do, everything else like that. I'm still gonna have alerts turned on, so if you still want to set off alerts during this, feel free. Kind of fuck with the discussion, and everything else like that. I do have packs coming up, so any support would definitely help for packs and everything else like that. I have everything to pay for it. It's just, having some spending money. I feel like this week is only the beginning. I got a feeling we got a lot more goodies coming. It feels like it. I'm just glad Hollow Knight fans can't complain about no Silksong at every games presentation anymore. Oh man, yeah, we'll probably discuss that a little bit. Yeah, what's going on, June there? All right, we'll probably get into it. Let's get into it then. Let's get into it. I actually have music prepped. We're gonna play some calming, relaxing Hollow Knight music during this whole thing, just to bring in the mood. So I think I'll work fine. All right, let's go. Get the swell in. Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Hypercole, and welcome to an interesting little stream that I'm doing here. I kind of just wanted to do the start because I might be cutting this out into maybe its own highlight maybe at some point. I don't know if I will be. I don't know if I will or not, but it's just something I do on my own time. This will be on YouTube regardless anyway because I'm streaming it there. For those who aren't aware, Hollow Knight Silksong finally has a release date. It's coming out in 2 weeks. September 4th, 2025. People have obviously been making jokes just being like, oh, it's actually going to be in 2026 or 2028. Or this one tweet where I saw being like, the September 4th has officially been postponed indefinitely. Scientists are trying to figure out this phenomenon. because it's a date. It's a date. It's finally a date. Like, we went from not knowing when it was going to come out or thinking that it was going to be so many years down the line to being like, oh, hey, it's coming out literally in a... Well, trying to adjust the audio. It's literally coming out in 2 weeks. It was like birds. It isn't real. Yeah, birds are real, don't you know? Anyway, so that was big news. But then after the release date was revealed, there was actually something that came out. An article from Bloomberg actually came out today, and it's a very interesting article about the game's development. And I've heard, like, little bits and pieces about it. I even skimmed through it a tiny bit and everything else like that. Talking about the development, because there's always been, like... It feels like as time has went on and people have kept waiting and waiting and waiting, I kept hearing things about, like, maybe the game was getting feature creep. Maybe it was, like... Maybe something was going on behind the scenes or something else like that. But then this article comes out. And from what I've heard... Apparently, development actually didn't have any major issues, and it just took a long time to make because they're a small team. So I want to read through this full article with all y'all because I think it's very, very fascinating, and I'm very fascinated to hear how the development cycle went for this game and everything else like that. So sometimes games take long to make, and that's okay. Yeah, sometimes it's just the case. What's going on, Jasper? Honey, how you doing? I love you. Anyway, with that being said, gotta make sure the screen's right. Yeah, we're good. All right, let's get into it. So this article is from Bloomberg. It is written by Jason Schreier. Jason Schreier is pretty well known in the gaming journalism space. And the title of the article is Why Silksong Took 7 Years to Make. The highly anticipated indie game has been in production for so long that it's become an internet meme. Pretty self-explanatory title. I actually really like that title and everything else like that. I love Twitch. You gotta love Twitch drops. Welcome, babe. Hope you're doing well. I love you. All right. Let's get into this article because I think this is going to be very, very fascinating and a good insight on the game as a whole and everything else like that because basically no more mysteries. So let's get straight into it. We are gonna read through the whole article. So we'll pause every now and then. Now, funnily enough, it says this article is for subscribers only. If you try, so Bloomberg does this one thing where it's like, sign up for our subscription model to read all our articles. But if you click on the link that Jason Schreier links, you can just read the article. So, even joked, but it honestly legit about saying, Sai, why does it take so long to make a game? The other day, I know he was messing around, but he was right, lol. Yeah, it's very much like something developers go through. But anyway, let's dive right in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Game On about a very special game that we'll be playing quite soon. The wait is over. It's surreal to write, but it's true. Silksong will be out on September 4th. After 6 years of near total silence from the developers and enough feverish anticipation to make it the most wish-listed game on Steam, which is wild, the sequel to the indie hit Hollow Knight is releasing in 2 weeks. Team Cherry, the small team behind both games, announced the news Thursday in a trailer. Why did it take so long? Which is what a lot of people were definitely asking. Often such hold on, I'll try and highlight the portions I'm sort of reading so you guys can keep track better. Often such I think maybe we'll zoom in just a little bit. There we go. That should be better. I hate there's this dumb thing under here. Fuck off, Bloomberg. Let's full screen this so we can see better. Often such protracted development cycles are caused by mismanagement and results in painful burnout among the staff. But speaking to me last week on a video call from their office in Adelaide, Australia, Team Cherry co-founders Ari Gibson and William Pellin said that making Silksong has been nothing but a joyful process. So there's that first thing down. And right into the quotes. We've been having fun, Gibson said, quoting him. This whole thing is just a vehicle for creativity anyway. It's nice to make things. The lengthy production was a result of development challenges or obstacles, they said. They just needed all these years to ensure that Silksong was exactly the game they wanted to make. Quote, it was never stuck or anything, Gibson said. It was always progressing. It's just the case that we're a small team and games take a long time. There wasn't any big controversial moment behind it. So this is very fascinating to me because, and it was mentioned in this article, we've seen stories about games being in development hell for so many goddamn years and everything else like that. Duke Nukem Forever is definitely an example of that. Metroid Prime 4 is also another example. I've heard murmurings of how that development cycle was a little bit bumpy. I mean, the game had to restart back in 2019. It was I heard it was originally Bandai Namco, and then they switched back to Retro Studios for Metroid Prime 4. So it's just very fascinating how, like, because of that, it's so ingrained in our minds and on the internet in general that something this long has to have some kind of trouble behind it. Like, why is this game not coming out yet? It's like, I remember when in 2022 there was a trailer during Xbox. Xbox proudly proclaimed that the game was going to be out within a year on Game Pass within 12 months, and then it never happened, and the game was delayed, apparently, supposedly, again. And I remember that happening and everything else like that. And there's been all the jokes about, like, the clown noses and the clown gear for Hollow Knight and everything else like that, and people making jokes about Silksong, which I get annoyed about, but I also joined in on it sometimes too, so really, I'm no different. Dread was in development hell since 2005, mind you. Yeah, Metroid Dread. Yeah, Metroid games actually do have, unfortunately, a history of sort of kind of weird development cycles, both Dread and Prime 4. So it's just very fascinating to just hear that despite the fact it's taken so long, the developers have come out and said, there's not really been trouble. There's not really been any trouble. We've actually had a lot of fun working on this game and everything else like that. There was always, like, the thing where people were talking about, that, like, I heard about, like, apparently the game might have had a feature creep. There's no definite, like, you know, thing for this and everything else like that. I don't know where the source is from, so don't take that in my word. But it's just funny that now the main people at Team Cherry is just like, no, the game, it was fun to work on this game. We had a great time. Let's continue with the article, though. The Silksong saga started in 2017 when Team Cherry released Hollow Knight, an action platform set in a vast world full of cartoon bugs. A Switch version released the following year added to the momentum. By the end of 2018, millions of fans were raving about its polished gameplay, distinct style, and impeccable vibes. As of today, the game has sold 15 million copies. I didn't realize it sold that many. Team Cherry said, making it one of the most successful independent video games ever. I had no idea it sold that many copies. Holy shit. Metroid fans suffer, but given what we got with Dread and what Prime 4 looks like now, fuck, it's been worth it. Initially, Gibson and Pellin had planned to release an expansion pack revolving around Hornet, one of its key characters. But in February 2019, they announced that the expansion had grown too big and would instead become a full-fledged sequel, titled Silksong. So, this is something that I did know, is that, and this is something that I'm wondering if a lot of people do remember. Silksong was originally going to be an expansion of the original Hollow Knight. It was going to be expansion. It was going to be part of the original game. And then they decided, no, this game is too big. We have to make it its own game. Hollow Knight had been massive, and their plan at the outset was to build a smaller world for Silksong. To ensure that the game felt just as deep, they'd implement an elaborate quest system that would offer the players reason to backtrack and revisit old locations. So, interesting. In contrast to Hollow Knight, which had a single town full of shops and characters to meet, there would also be multiple towns, each serving as a hub for quest. This is something that I actually forgot, is that, yeah, the original Hollow Knight only had one town. There was only one town, basically, where you bought stuff. Like, there were other shops, but there was basically only one town, essentially, to, like, regroup. But apparently now there's going to be multiple towns. This is a quote from Gibson again. Even at that point, we were recognizing that it was going to become another giant thing to rival the scale of Hollow Knight or probably exceed it, Gibson said. And then because of how we work, obviously the world ended up being just as big or bigger. And the quest system existed. And multiple towns existed. Suddenly you ended up 6-7 years later. So, reading it more, it all came down to their development style, which may have been too much fun. Gibson and Pellin, who were joined by programmer Jack Vine, composer Chris Larkin, and a few contractors to help with programming and testing, started off by designing the core gameplay for Hornet, the game's slick protagonist. From there, it was easy to implement and test out new ideas, even as the game grew bigger. Reminds me of how some movies are being made. The ideas get written, and then for some reason it gets put aside, and then gets picked up again and finally gets made, in a sense. I guess so. A lot of video games, as such, were several years in the making. You can also definitely see that, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about... I think there's a thing talked about, because, like, Deltarune is an example of that, but the difference with that is that that's being set, like, released episodically, and Toby's been a bit more upfront about, you know, stuff and everything else like that, being more frequent. We'll get more to that later about how they handle it, but... Because they do talk about it, I think, a bit in this article. Quote from Gibson again. We're very fortunate that we have a development method that is so enjoyable, Gibson said. Not exactly sure how we stumbled into that. Everything comes together quickly. You can see results fast. Ideas turn into something that exists in a game almost immediately before your eyes, and that's very satisfying. And that allows you to go off on those tangents and meet weird characters because someone's offhandedly mentioned a weird character as an idea, and the other person's laughed, and that's enough. Interestingly, this reminds me of Mario Kart World's development and how someone like a concept artist or something else like that drew a cow in a car and everything else like that, and the developers just like, that's it. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. So it's not uncommon. Quote from Pellin now. You're always working on a new idea, new item, new area, new boss, Appellant said. That stuff's so nice. It's for the sake of just completing the game that we're stopping. We could have kept going. For the sake of just completing the game that we're stopping, we could have kept going. They actually had to tell themselves... So this tells me they actually had to tell themselves, we need to stop. We need to stop. There is already so much in this game already. We need to stop. And yeah, right here, actually. The downside of this methodology was that it could have lasted forever. So this means that the meme of Silksong forever actually wasn't far off, funnily enough. That's what's really funny about that. And it also probably supports the theory that the game was suffering a bit from feature creep. I remember at some point I just had to stop sketching, Gibson said, because I went, everything I'm drawing here has to end up in the game. That's a cool idea. That's in. That's a cool idea. That's in. You realize. If I don't stop drawing, this is going to take 15 years to finish. Even, like, that's crazy. Like, that's like one of those things where it's just like, we drew this, okay, it's going in. We drew this, okay, it's going in. So that seems to actually confirm that they did suffer a bit from feature creep in development, and they were just having too much fun adding stuff into the game and everything else like that. During the development of Hollow Knight, Gibson and Pellin frequently posted game updates and talked to players. At the end of 2019, Team Cherry posted one more update about Silksong, and then went silent, much to fans' dismay. This is what Gibson had to say about it. We felt like continued updates were just going to sour people on the whole thing, Gibson said. Because all we could really say is, we're still working on it. Okay, we'll continue on, because there's still more reasoning. They wanted to be particularly cautious about avoiding spoilers. Much of the thrill of Hollow Knight came from accidentally stumbling upon secret passageways or breaking down walls to find hidden bugs. Silksong has plenty of its own secrets that they didn't want to detail before the release. Plus, they thought Silksong would be out much sooner. Okay. So, interestingly enough. Instead of popping up and bugging people for the sake of it, it felt like our actual responsibility was just to work on the game, Pellin said. So, this is Pellin talking now. Probably at the time, we thought we'd go quiet for a year or two, then the game would come out. Now we get the COVID. In 2020, as COVID disrupted most video game productions around the world, Adelaide was able to starve off the worst of the pandemic, going months without new cases, which allowed Gibson and Pellin to continue plugging along on Silksong. Seems a little odd, so this is once again quoting Gibson. Seems a little odd knowing that the rest of the world had such a dramatic and isolated period, Gibson said. Here we are, going to cafes and having brunch. Yeah, that was a thing. Like, Australia and New Zealand were insanely good at dealing with this pandemic. Like, insanely good. So, that's very interesting. So, interestingly enough, COVID actually didn't really give much of a hit to Silksong, which is very interesting. But yeah, like, one, it's definitely very obvious that they were just adding a bunch of stuff. So again, feature creep. But also, two, I'm a little on and off about their methodology, personally. What's going on some random rainy day? I'm a bit on and off about their methodology with not saying anything. Because on one hand, I understand not spoiling anything. But on another hand, like, I feel like just saying, hey, we're still working on the game, and maybe just being like, maybe this is our current progress or anything else like that. But also, I'm realizing that maybe that probably would have not been the best option either, because they were constantly adding into the game. I think what happened here is that they were kind of I think they were just kind of stuck a little bit. I think that's what I'm seeing here, is that they didn't know when they wanted to say anything. They did say one thing, like, okay, we obviously, Silksong briefly resurfaced in 2022 during an Xbox event, which promised that all the games showed up would be out within a year. Xbox doubled down on Twitter, saying that the Hollow Knight sequel will be out before June 2023. Oh boy. At the time, they all thought it was true. From Pellin, we did genuinely believe that was the case, Pellin said. There was a period of 2 to 3 years where I thought it was going to come out within a year. But the game kept growing. So, end quote. After a year. But the game kept growing. Silksong has more elaborate bosses than Hollow Knight, more gameplay systems, and more interactivity. Gibson and Pellin wanted objects in the world to react to Hornet's various tools, which required a ton of drawing and animation work. Quoted from Gibson. Oh my god, Drops, you're fucking right. They had world-building disease. You must relate to this hard then. Holy shit. You must fucking relate to this then. Because, like, yeah, that's what I... Oh my god, they're just like me. Yeah, that, like, when you really think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because, Jasper, you've talked about how you have so much art that you've done that's just, like, gigabytes worth. And then, Drops, you talked about just constantly world building and, like, redesigning characters and doing all this and that and this and that. That's crazy. That's crazy. Man, who knew that dating two people who also sort of deal with a similar thing would give better context for this type of stuff? All right, quote from Gibson. I think we're always underestimating the amount of time and effort it'll take us to achieve things, Gibson said. It's also that problem where, because we're having fun doing it, it's not like, it's taking longer, this is awful. We really need to get past this phase. This is a very enjoyable space to be in. Let's perpetuate this with some new ideas. They wanted to just keep going. They didn't want to stop. They had too much fun working on the game. And the thing is, here's the thing. This is something to point out. This is something that needs to be pointed out, by the way. Team Cherry is publishing the game themselves. This is like physically, most likely they're probably gonna get Fangamer to help publish the game, probably. But in terms of like digital, they're the ones publishing it. There is not a publisher telling them to stop. There is no higher ups telling them to stop. Even when Xbox was like, hey, this game is gonna be out before June 2023, they didn't fucking stop. They didn't, it honestly makes this way more relatable. I think, for me, just listening more to this, you realize that they were really focused on their art and everything else like that, and producing more with their art and everything else like that. That's so interesting. The longer development lasted, the more pressure Gibson and Pellin felt to ensure that everything was as fine-tuned as possible. They already spent 4 years on it. Why would they rush now? The more time they spent on polishing some parts, the more time they needed to apply it consistently across the rest. Yeah. Quote from Pellin. There's a level of finish that has to be met throughout the entire game, Pellin said. All the way the systems interact. All the ways the system interact. That's a little bit of a typo, I think. All the way the systems interact. That's probably not a typo. All the hidden work that pops up later on. It's multiplicative. And as you add stuff, the process of tying it all back together just increases. It's also probably not only them adding stuff, but also replacing stuff with the new, which can also take a while to work on. Yep. Pretty much. Throughout development, Team Cherry remained tiny, which may have extended the production time, but also saved them from the slog of having to manage and delegate. Quote from Gibson. We don't want to mess with the formula and then find out it's not fun, Gibson said. I used to manage teams in past lives. I don't really want to do that ever again. Staying small also meant eschewing the production practices commonplace at many game development studios. Gibson was like, what is Jira? Gibson said, when I asked if they use the task management application. Is it a software? Pellin said, adding that they'd briefly used Trello before their account was deactivated because they didn't use it enough. Holy shit! What? They were using Trello, but then their account got deactivated because they weren't using it enough. What? Holy shit. God damn. Yeah. As development dragged on, the hype for Silksong grew more feverish. Screenshot Team Cherry. Perhaps the biggest reason Silksong took so long was that Team Cherry never had to worry about the one thing that keeps other independent developers awake at night. Money. During the production of Hollow Knight, they'd stayed they'd stayed lean, sometimes living off leftover triangle sandwiches that their office neighbor would bring them after meetings. Quote from Gibson, "My dad would sometimes pop up and give me $20, Gibson said. He'd be like, oh, I'm having coffee today." Thanks to the first game's massive success, Gibson and Pellin no longer had to scrounge leftovers. For Pellin, who has 2 kids and a third on the way, that's provided an inestimable peace of mind. That's a bit hard to say. For Gibson, who said he spends most of his time at the office, it hasn't changed much. From Gibson, I live in a very basic 2-bed apartment, he said. Sometimes I think, you know what would be better is a 1-bedroom apartment, because then there's even less to maintain. My God. But also, Pellin having kids probably was very much just like, they had a lot to work with. But yeah, 15 million copies as a reminder, which, like everyone's, like, things different. But if we take into account Steam's, like, 70%, like, cut. So let me do some math here. And then what is that? Like, I'm going to divide that by 10 and times it by 7. Hollow Knight Silksong has made, at the very least, over $150 million. $150 million. So that probably helped with a lot of things, at least over time. Jasper says, not gonna lie, this behind the scenes sold me more on the game than the actual development, because I love hearing about devs actually enjoying a thing they're doing. That's why Sakurai sold Air Rider so well. You can just tell by the way he talks about it. You can tell by the way someone talks about their art or how they go about their art if they're so passionate about it. And Team Cherry absolutely is. That requires a lot of care. Yeah, having kids during COVID times too. But to be fair, they said that COVID was less of an issue for them in Australia than it was for everyone else in the world, because Australia and New Zealand were much better about dealing with COVID than so many other places, especially the US. Continuing on with the article. Thanks to their massive first game's financial success, Gibson and Pellin no longer had to scrounge... Oh, okay. Sorry, I already read this. My bad. Move on. The game has continued to generate revenue by reaching new players, perhaps in large part due to Silksong's buzz. Due to the Silksong buzz. When the studio announced Silksong in February 2019, Hollow Knight had sold 2.8 million copies. The game has sold another 12 million since then, allowing Team Cherry to keep working on the sequel indefinitely without having to worry about running out of funds. Gibson says, quote from Gibson, "We're very lucky in that regard," Gibson said. "I don't ever really think about it that much. Maybe that's the privilege of it." As the years went on and the hype kept building, a Reddit forum dedicated to the game filled up with nonsensical blabber and made-up tweets, which users called Silk Posts, a variation on the expletive. Meanwhile, chat sections for video game live streams and Nintendo Direct events were plagued with the same fair messages repeated over and over. Silk Song when? Ooh, okay. We're hearing about their spectators. The dig on the subreddit. Gibson and Pellin tuned it all out, rarely going online. They say they never read comments on YouTube or Reddit, although occasionally friends or family would send them some of the funniest ones. Quote from Gibson. "It's nice that people are passionate about the game, and that they've obviously formed their own strange or very exciting communities around it," Gibson said. Pellin then says, "Feels like we're going to ruin their fun by releasing the game," Pellin said. Oh my God. Holy shit. So, they essentially ignored most of it. They ignored most of it. It says here, once in a while, people would show up at the Team Cherry office, sometimes with their children, perhaps hoping for a Willy Wonka-type experience. Inevitably, they were disappointed by what they found instead. It's a grubby room with cardboard boxes, Gibson said. So they've even kept it small with their studio. Their walls remain the same dull avocado color that they were when Team Cherry moved in more than a decade ago. They never even put up art. They've been too busy making the game. In early 2025, Gibson and Pellin began to see the finish line and started making plans to release the game in the fall. Players, desperate for information, devoured every scrap of news, like the announcement that it would be playable at a museum in September, hoping this might finally be the year. I remember that. I fucking remember that. And I tuned that, and I didn't look into that too much, because I'm just like, just because it's going to be playable here doesn't mean it's going to be out then. That's not what it means. They were avoiding unwanted pressure. Yeah, that's basically what they were doing. Both Nintendo Corporation and Microsoft Corporation's Xbox said during live events this year that Silksong was planned for 2025, but fans were cautious. They'd been down this road before. Yeah. Meanwhile, Team Cherry kept working. The shape of the game has been finalized for a while, Pellin said. The last year or two has been all about the details, adding small encounters, polishing everything, and tying it all together. And they're still working to finalize things until the last possible minute. As we spoke, with Silksong a little more than 3 weeks out, I spotted programmer Jack Vine in the background, tweaking code for one of the game's console ports. Gibson and Pellin say they're happy that the game is finally coming out, and even happier that they will get to keep working on it, which they still find enjoyable even after 7 years. They haven't burned out or shown any desire to take a break. Instead, they're already making big plans to add extra content to Silksong in the months and years to come. God damn it, guys! Are you serious? Okay, so free updates are coming. There's free updates coming in the future. After all this time, despite the fact that the amount of enemies and the amount of bosses match up to the same, basically a similar amount as the original Hollow Knight, plus its free content, to mind you, they are still going to make free updates. They're still going to release more updates. Or at least, like, I mean, it doesn't say free here, but they're still going to add more content. They're still going to keep working on it. What? Let's keep going. Launching it is obviously quite exciting, Pellin said. What comes after for us is equally as exciting. They move on to Gibson. The most interesting thing now is what can we add to it next, Gibson said. We got a plan. Admittedly, some of the plans for that stuff are kind of ambitious as well, but hopefully we can achieve some of it. Stay tuned for 2032 to see how that turns out. I respect that. Talk about world building Z's. Yeah, turning world building Z's into a feature. And that's it. That's the article. That's the full article. Wow. Wow. God damn. There were some very interesting tidbits. So, yeah. It turns out they really just kept adding more and more into the game, and they just had to tell themselves to stop. They finally had to tell themselves it had to stop. And all the reason why they... So, we now know why they didn't really do any updates, because they were unsure. They were constantly unsure when the game was actually going to come out, because they kept adding more and more to it. They didn't want to spoil anything, and they didn't want to just be like, we are working on it, because they didn't want to say anything. Which has its advantages and disadvantages, and I do understand the reasoning. I want to be clear about that, but I do think that them not saying anything did ultimately contribute to the sort of fanatic nature that fans have. Like, I do think it contributed to it. Obviously, it didn't lead to anything, like, bad. I wouldn't say that. Did it lead people getting annoyed about Silksong on the internet? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely did. But it seems like they just didn't care about the discourse. They didn't want to see the discourse. They just wanted to make their game. They wanted to make the game they wanted to make. That's all that they really cared about, honestly. It really doesn't matter if people overhype themselves for this and come out disappointed. Team Cherry had a very healthy development cycle period throughout all this. That's all that matters. That's a good mindset to have, yeah, honestly. Personally, for me, I was going to buy this game no matter what. Like, there was no way. And I will say, I do have much more mad respect for the development team now. Especially because they, like, it's just so funny that they used Trello for a bit, and then it get deactivated because they didn't use it enough. What? And they're going to keep adding more to it? These guys love making video games. They love making video games. These are people who love making video games. They make it. They make a video game because they love it. They don't make it for money. They don't make it to appease shareholders. They don't do any of that. They just love what they do. And everything else like that. Just like how Sakurai loves what he does. Just like how Toby Fox gets to make the game that he wants and loves what he does. Now, obviously, with Toby, his team's gone a bit bigger, but the sentiment, I still feel like it's the same with him. Stuff like this is what makes me love video games. And what makes me have hope for video games. Despite the fact that the AAA industry is so goddamn fucking toxic. It really... Can we meme enjoying making video games instead? Like, yeah. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, honestly. Like... But yeah, that was a great article. Like, solid article also from Jason Schreier. That was really good to read. That was really fun to read, honestly. Like, the overall structure of the article was fantastic. I love the little jokes in there, too. I love the joke at the end, too. Really good. Really, really... Just great. Just fantastic. Now, one more thing I do want to note here. This was not featured in the article, but Jason Schreier did put out a Blue Sky post, and most likely a tweet, about this. And that's in regards to codes, actually. Early codes for the game. And that's the fact that there's not going to be early codes for the game. So, this is from Jason Schreier's Blue Sky. In case you're wondering, Team Cherry told me they don't plan on sending out early codes for Silksong. They felt that it'd be unfair for critics to be playing before Kickstarter backers and other players. So don't expect to see reviews until after the game comes out. As a reminder, for those who forgot, the original Hollow Knight was a Kickstarter. That was a Kickstarter. Which means that they probably reached a goal in order to put in a sort of like expansion for Silksong as a backer, as like a backer experience. Which also tells me that they might be still sending this game out to people who backed that game so long ago. I do wonder if that's still going to happen. I wonder. It's because technically they still need to deliver something they promised. So that's really fascinating. Like, that confirms to me they're still going to send the game to backers. Even after all this time. Which is crazy. Like, I need to see when the Hollow Knight Kickstarter was. Let me look it up. November 18th, 2014. That's over a decade ago. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I did look this up. I've looked this up. And, it is... Let's see. So, right here, in terms of their article, let's see. Let me go ahead and do... Sorry, this. I was pausing for a minute. Right here. This is from 2019 when they announced Silksong. As a backer, your support made this happen, so you'll of course be receiving your copy of Hollow Knight Silksong 100% free. But we also know that times change, and Nintendo Switch is becoming uncommon and excellent console to own. Because that any backer of the game from the $10 Australian dollar tier and above tiers can choose to receive their copy of Hollow Knight Silksong free on either PC or Nintendo Switch at launch. We'll shoot out a simple survey as we get close to release to find out which version you'd like to receive. Higher tier backers will receive multiple copies of Hollow Knight. We'll also receive multiple copies of Hollow Knight Silksong. The same rules apply as for Hollow Knight. You can elect for your primary copy to either be Nintendo Switch or PC. Hollow Knight Silksong PC will either be supplied as a Steam key or DRM free. So, they are still, after all this time, going to deliver Silksong to their backers. After all this fucking time. That is insane. This goes so damn deep. And then another little post under here. Also, What does a FWI... I keep forgetting what FWIW means, by the way. For what it's worth. Thank you. For what it's worth, I don't think that's the only reason. They also mentioned that it'd take a long time to get codes and distribute them, etc. And they're a tiny team with lots to do in the next 2 weeks. I will say, they with the money they had, they probably could have gotten somebody to help with that, with distribution. They probably could have gotten somebody to do that, most likely. Because I do feel like, that said, the sentiment to, like, after this time, they want to make sure that the Kickstarter backers get their codes and everything else like that, and they feel it's unfair to send it out to anybody else early. I understand that sentiment. I do feel like they could have maybe used some of that money, but maybe they decide not to because they didn't want to be influenced more. This very much seemed like a thing where they didn't want any, like, outside... They had some contractors, obviously. They were not against contracting, but they didn't want to deal with any, like, corporate meddling, essentially, of this project. Despite the fact that Xbox has been the company being like, hey, Silksong will be on our console. It will be on our ROG Xbox Ally and everything else like that. And then Team Cherry coming out being like, our release date has nothing to do with that. Because they don't care. They'll release the game when they want to. They don't give a fuck. They didn't care that Xbox was just like, it's coming out June 2023. It's just like, nah, we actually have more we want to put in. So... It's anti-corporate. It's extremely anti-corporate. Like, or it's maybe not anti-corporate, but it's like, it's, no corporate BS. The mindset is punk rock, especially in a world more and more driven by profit. Yeah. Their game is not driven by profit. It's driven by creating something they love. So, I think this has been insanely fascinating and everything else like that. I'm glad I finally read that I'm glad I read that article, honestly, with you guys, because I think that, I think it lets us some very interesting discussion about video games and why people make video games and how it feels like a lot of game development, especially in the AAA industry, has ultimately been tainted by a lot of corporate meddling, obviously, by crunch and shareholders and all that type of such. Like, seeing this today, it really goes back to the whole thing where there are people who just want to make video games to make video games. They want to make video games for the art. They don't want to make it because they want to make as much money as possible. They don't want to make it because they could, like, nickel and dime people, like, front and back or anything else like that. They want to make it because it's fun. They want to make it because it's something they enjoy. You can take your time. What's important is what you feel while you make your art. So, yeah, I think that's super cool. But yeah, that was fun. So I guess now you're probably asking yourself, chat, Cole, are you gonna play this game day one? Yes. Yes, I am. I'm probably going to get the Switch 2 version, because the Switch 2 version supports 120 FPS, and I feel like for that, it's going to be much easier to set up than probably getting the PC version. So I'll probably end up getting the Switch 2 version, and maybe we'll play with 120 FPS. That'll be a lot of fun. Now, with that being said, I do want to quickly talk a bit about PAX, because PAX is in 6 days, and everything else like that. Yeah, because we got Curve also the cover as well. So we're going to be juggling a few games whenever I get back from PAX. It's going to be a busy September, chat. It's going to be a very busy September. So yeah, so in terms of PAX, all right, JG, thanks for stopping by. You have yourselves a good night. It was nice seeing you in chat. Take it easy. But to get back to what I'm talking about, earlier today, for those who don't know, Nintendo opened up registration for the Warp Pipe Pass for PAX West, where you have a chance to play Pokemon ZA or Kirby Air Riders, which were both separate Warp Pipe passes. I got into both. I managed to get both. And I even got the same times as also a couple more of my friends. So I will be able to try Air Riders and Pokemon ZA when I'm at PAX. I'll be trying them on the same day. I'm basically trying... We're going to be trying them back-to-back, basically. So I'll most likely be putting out my thoughts on Blue Sky and everything else like that. If I can, maybe I'll also get some footage of me playing the game, if they allow that. And maybe I'll have a little thing, maybe discussing... I know right now it's myself, Shamrock, and Dalton who got same time. So all three of us will be going to play both Pokemon, Kirby Air Riders and Pokemon ZA when we're there. So maybe I'll put out a thing where we're discussing it or something else like that, because I think that'd be interesting. I don't know if I'll be able to try Silksong while I'm there, because that line is most likely going to be really fucking long. Because Silksong is not behind a Warp Pipe Pass. It's in like there's like two separate Nintendo booths. One's going to be for the Warp Pipe Pass. The other one's going to be for third-party games. And most likely, that line for Silksong is going to be long. But there's also going to be Hades 2. And there's Hades 2. There's Elden Ring. There's Final Fantasy. And there was one more game. Was it Borderlands? I think it was Borderlands. Although I hear the Elden Ring demo, apparently. That was at... It's most likely going to be a PAX, as well as at Gamescom. It's apparently very rough. So, they're brave for still bringing it. I hear the Final Fantasy Remake port is pretty good. Alright, but yeah, so I'll be checking those out at PAX and giving my thoughts most likely on Blue Sky, and probably also maybe talk about it here on stream whenever I get back, so hope you guys look forward to that. That being said, schedule. Tomorrow, we will be doing the second of 2 art raffles. We'll be giving away 5 more drawings tomorrow. It will be dedicated to people who have not gotten drawings yet, so if you did not win a drawing on yesterday, you have a chance to win a drawing tomorrow, so be sure to tune in and everything else like that. And then Monday will most likely be our last stream before PAX. We will be doing one more round of Earthbound Monday. And then I go on my trip on the 27th. And I'll be gone between the 27th and September 2nd. And then I will be back on September 3rd for some Curb. And September 4th for Silksong. So many games. As always, chat, if you want to support me, really fantastic. I am actually considering potentially doing a sort of flash sale potentially soon, for art and everything else like that. So maybe keep your eyes peeled for that. Might be potentially do a flash sale, maybe like basically before I go to PAX. With the disclaimer that I'll most likely get to these art pieces probably after I get back from PAX or something else like that. So maybe keep your eyes peeled. There might be a flash sale coming soon, for art. But, yeah, thanks for all hanging out. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream, and I have to go back and work on some video stuff because I got stuff to work on before PAX. Which is fun. But, yeah. Y'all are great. Thanks for chilling with me. Thanks for chatting and everything else like that. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the second art raffle of the month. It's gonna be fun. Till we again, folks, please have yourselves a good night. And take it easy. And all the type of such. Sorry, Slime, you got here right at the end. We just finished. I'm so sorry. We just finished discussing Silksong. But I appreciate you at least stopping by at the end. Alright. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the second art raffle. Take it easy, folks. Bye-bye. I don't know what I was doing here.